something I know that the manosphere loves to talk about, but I think we have to talk about it a little bit, and that's the whole single moms thing. And before you get triggered, Emily.
Because I'm a single mom.
I know.
Hey guys, welcome to the Emily and Todd Podcast. Today we're talking about red flags in women and why, when there is enough of these, it should send you men running. Before we get started, please remember to like and comment under this video, as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. So Todd, I feel like red flags we hear about often. Why do you think it's such an important topic for us to talk about today?
Oh, I think it's really important for a variety of reasons, because a guy who gets himself involved with a woman who has significant emotional issues is going to cause a lot of difficulty in your life.
Stress, for sure.
A lot of stress.
And I feel like they're hard to resolve, like emotional issues over any other types of issues. And I'm sure you can speak to that as a psychologist, that's, one of the harder things that take a lot of time and a lot of work that people a lot of times are not ready for.
Well, first, I'd like to preface this by saying that there's just as many damaged men as there are damaged women. So this isn't us hating on women at all. We have a largely male audience, and so that's who we're speaking to. But the other thing I'd like to really nuance is the difference between somebody that has gone through trauma and has difficulties with emotional issues, but is untreated, versus somebody who is treated and has been in treatment.
Right.
That can make a world of difference.
Right. And I think that that's what sometimes is hard for people to hear, is when we refer to somebody as damaged. Like, it makes it sound like because you've gone through some sort of trauma in your past that it's permanent. But that's not what we're saying at all. We're talking about the people that haven't really gone in deep and resolved these things. Like, that is the person, because nobody can change anyone. You cannot force somebody to change. And I think a lot of people make that mistake to thinking that they can. And instead, the best thing really is to avoid being in a especially intimate relationship with these types of people.
Yes. Yeah. So the first thing is to say, okay, what are some signs? And I think we can break that down by kind of external and internal. And so I'm interested from the female's perspective, the woman's perspective, what you would see as an external sign of damage. Because I have a whole list of them.
I know.
But I'm interested in your take.
I think that there can be quite a few things. So physically speaking, I think that if there's like big signs that she is trying to change a lot about herself. So anything that's like unnatural, it's nothing that I like to do personally to myself, is like anything crazy extravagant, right? So off the top of my head, like doing any kind of crazy plastic surgery. And I think that there's some gray area probably with like lip fillers, Botox potentially. But I think it takes a combination of a lot of those things where she's changing herself, a boob job, like if it's just one thing or two things, and she might be changing herself or modifying herself into something that she used to have, like I'm not going to give any crap to a woman that has had babies and has saggy boobs and wants a boob lift.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that when you have a whole combination of these things, and especially a young woman in her 20s, like that is beautiful already naturally, I think it's a sign of like, well, what's going on there? Why is she lacking so much confidence? And because I just see it as that, like, she must not be confident about her natural beauty. And that's why she's trying to change herself.
Yeah. You're being so diplomatic about this.
I know. Because I already know what you're going to say. What do you think? And I've heard a lot from the manosphere as far as like things that you should avoid the second you see on a woman, but
I actually agree with you. 100% actually, meaning the fact that if there's something that can be modified because of the fact that it is an insecurity, then I don't really see it as a big deal. What I see, and again, this is kind of down the same lane, is the fact that if they have a multitude of things going on, that's something where they're trying, and if they're young, that's even scarier. I mean, you've seen some women where they don't even look human.
No.
to this point, because everything has been modified. Their hair, their eyelashes, their makeup.
Yeah. And they start to all look the same.
Yes.
Like the women that have a lot of these procedures done, I really cannot tell the difference between one or the other, other than hair color maybe.
Yes. The lip filler thing right now is a huge indicator. And it's one thing to say, okay, maybe I have thin lips. Look, I could probably use it because I have thin lips. But it's one thing to go to that to an extreme level.
Yeah.
Where you look like you get punched in the mouth.
Right.
That's not attractive, first of all.
No.
And second of all, it's a giant waving red flag. For sure. So if you put all of those kind of physical attributes in, and so we're talking about, like I said, kind of going down the list. If they're checking a lot of these boxes, that's demonstration of that they're not comfortable in their own skin.
Right. Now, how many women like this do you think men in the real world are running into? Because I do think that we see a lot of it, on social media. I don't think that so many of real world women are doing these things just because they can't afford them. To have lip filler on, a biweekly basis, or I don't even know how often they get it, but
yeah.
That stuff gets expensive, especially when you're talking about plastic surgery.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking more of, so if we're talking about women's version of looks maxing.
Yeah.
It's the soft looks maxing. So it's the stuff like makeup, nails, eyelashes that isn't that expensive. I mean, I'm not saying that makeup isn't expensive, but comparatively to plastic surgery.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, if I agree with you that if a woman has a boob job or definitely like a BBL, that's a huge red flag.
Yeah. 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 And I do see that you made a really good point that even for women that can't afford that type of plastic surgery, that they are probably ones that are going to be getting their nails done and have eyelash extensions and maybe doing crazy stuff with their hair, and changing their hair pretty often too, most likely. Because that can be fun every so often. But I don't know. I don't think that somebody that's like really doing well and comfortable in their life is going to be seeking those big changes, every time they go to the hairstylist.
Yes.
So it can be indicators. It can be red flags.
Yeah. I would also say, and this has never failed me as far as interviewing people or just in my own life, if a woman has an excessive amount of tattoos.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have a couple strategically placed. That could potentially even be sexy. But if it's arm sleeves and anywhere in the neck, definitely the face, knuckles. Do you know what I mean? It's something where it's an indicator that this woman has gone through trauma. And to be quite honest, I think most kind of conservative, traditional guys just don't see that as being attractive.
I've heard
when it's
it a
overdone.
Lot. Yeah. When they have even a full sleeve.
Yeah.
You think would be too much?
Oh, I mean, there's women that are covered head to toe.
Yeah. I mean, I think about a man having that many tattoos, and I wouldn't find that attractive. That would just be a little too much for me.
I agree. I think, but men somehow are seen, especially in this day and age, with tattoos as, kind of being badass and hyper masculine and things like that.
Yeah.
But if a woman has the same amount or like an excessive amount, it's something where I think it's kind of what they've utilized to cope. Just with whatever trauma they've gone through or just life in general, or, to kind of feel empowered. So it's just something to be aware of. And again, this is generally speaking. This is not, there's definitely exceptions.
Right. Yeah, that's where, like, I've known personally plenty of people, plenty of women that have a lot of tattoos, not like head to toes, but full sleeve for sure. And they're like wonderful people. And I think that they're emotionally mature. So definitely not saying that a woman that has these things is going to definitely indicate that she has emotional issues. But
well, how about this though? Depending on what the tattoos are as well.
Oh, that's a good point.
So if she has 666 tattooed on her neck or something like that.
That's a problem.
That's a problem.
Yeah. I have another one that's, I mean, it's changeable, but the clothing that she wears.
Oh, yeah.
So if it's very provocative clothing, I think that's a red flag.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
Provocative today, I feel like is, it's pretty extreme stuff. So that includes like on her social media and then of course in person too. If you're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk about more kind of internal. And this is things that while you're maybe in the talking stage, if you get to that point. So to me, the talking stage is prior to kind of going on a first date. So it's most of the time in today's day and age, that's kind of texting. And maybe you might have a phone call or a FaceTime prior to meeting out. But it's some of the things that you can kind of talk to a woman about and get an understanding about where she is with these things. And if they appear, then be careful.
Yeah.
So
I think some of the things too you can see from a dating app, like a lot of the things that I'm thinking of right off the bat that I look for or that I used to look for is habits, right? Like what kind of habits, hobbies do they have? Habits meaning like, do they use substances?
Yes.
I think that's a red flag.
Yeah.
Again, not saying that every smoker out there is a bad person, but I think it's just an indicator that they're putting something into their body that they know and everyone knows is unhealthy and they haven't dealt with that and they haven't faced it.
Well, if they think about smoking at a base level, one is that it's an addiction and it's very easy to get addicted to. And two, the old kind of thought process we used to use in treatment was if somebody was a smoker, they were dealing with an underlying anxiety. And if somebody was a drinker, they were dealing with the depression. And so the interesting thing is that what happens when you smoke is during that process of smoking, it alleviates your anxiety. But once you put that cigarette down and you go back to work or whatever, your anxiety then is going to increase significantly more than it would have been if you wouldn't have had that cigarette to cope with that anxiety in the first place. So that's where you see people who start with maybe one or two a day, maybe at the end of a work shift or something like that, then all of a sudden, a year later, are up smoking a pack a day or have a vape, which is huge now, and they're always sucking on that vape.
They need just more and more of it.
Yes.
Just to like remain at baseline.
Yes. So essentially what they're doing is they're masking their symptoms by doing that, but then they've created an addiction on top of that. And so a lot of people go through trauma that would create having difficulties with anxiety. But again, it's kind of what you do when you have those symptoms that is going to put you in the camp of kind of unhealthy versus healthy. So that's kind of with smoking. And so that's the kind of irony of it, is that it actually does help, but then it makes things worse. Same thing with alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant. So the way alcohol works, it's the biggest bait and switch in the world, is when you drink alcohol, your mood actually elevates. So if your baseline is here, when you drink alcohol, it will go up to here. But after you're done drinking, it'll go down to here. And so what you need to do in order to even get up to the baseline again is drink more. So that can also become very progressively worse over time. And we're not even talking about hard drugs. Which to me, alcohol is honestly a poison, and you have to be able to kind of use it moderately. Yeah. Otherwise, it's going to ruin your life. But if a woman does cocaine, if she does
big problems,
heroin, any big street drugs and things like that, that means she's self-medicating.
Yes.
And she's not getting proper treatment. And if anybody's ever met anybody who's suffered from an addiction, they can make your life absolutely hell. They will steal from you. They will do everything possible to get their needs met.
Yeah.
And it's not even a personal thing, but it will bring you down.
Yeah. And again, you can't force them to change.
No.
You can't force them into rehab in most cases. So
yes. Well, even then, I really believe that most of the time you kind of have to hit your rock bottom before you decide that you're going to get some help.
Yeah.
So if you're texting with a woman, for example, just casually ask. I know, sometimes this might sound cringy, but, it's just like, are you a partier? Like, ask her that. And then, because kind of what that means in street lingo is, do you use drugs? And, if she says, hell yeah, I just like to do my coke on weekends, though, or something like that. It's like, okay, no thanks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of asking some questions. So the other big question is, what's your relationship like with your dad?
Yeah, I think that's a biggie.
Yes.
For women especially. Because I think that women that do not have a strong relationship with their dad, or even just a healthy relationship with their dad, like that has just huge impacts on their life.
Yes.
And they will have needed to have dealt with it, I think. So sure, if a woman didn't have her dad around when she was being raised, but she's gone to therapy, like that's a huge indicator. And if like all other aspects of her life seem healthy, like healthy habits, she's not participating in any of those things that we just talked about, might be an indicator that she's really healed from that. But what do you think is the risk? What happens when a woman doesn't have her dad in her life or has an unhealthy relationship with him?
Well, I think what she does a lot of times is then project that onto you. So she's either trying to get her needs met through the new relationship or new contact, as far as saying, okay, I want that positive male role model in their life. They want that kind of nurturing that they didn't get before. But they also, without even realizing, again, this is an unconscious process, they will have a lot of anger issues towards their dad, and they'll project them onto you as well.
I could see definitely a lot of insecurities too. If he wasn't around, then she might suspect that you're just going to leave.
Yes.
And then there's a whole bunch load of stuff that can happen and behaviors that will be displayed from her just because of those fears.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's that, or if she was abused, for example, then, she's going to be hypersensitive to males in general. And, think about what that would do to a person if the person that is supposed to love you the most hurts you. So it's really going to mess you up. And again, untreated, it's really high risk to go into a relationship with a woman who has issues with her father. And this is, pretty just all you have to do is ask, how I would start with, how do you get along with your parents? And then narrow it down to how do you get along with your dad?
Yeah. Or even just, are you close to your parents? Do you see your parents?
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's like a normal question. Usually,
it is a normal question.
You get asked if you have brothers or sisters, and then that kind of goes into the family discussion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even to piggyback off of that, what was your childhood like? Did you was it pleasant? Was it was it something that, or was it racked with dysfunction? And
are your parents still together?
Your parents still together. Exactly. Do you see them on a regular basis? Do you do holidays with them? What's your relationship with them? And so if they come from a good, healthy family structure, and every family has issues. Let's not get this twisted.
For sure.
But and the other thing I'd really like to say that I should have prefaced this with is that you can measure anything in life on a continuum. And so this isn't a black or white deal. There's some women that are so insane. I hate that's a legal term. It's not a clinical one. But you can tell from a mile away. And then there's other ones that, are kind of in that gray area. And, then there's other people that you can tell are just very healthy. So, and again, applies to men and women. So we talk to men, so here that is. I'm not sure if you've heard this term, Emily. It's called shit testing.
Yes.
Okay. And so it's kind of the male version of that. And essentially what that would be is to see if our actions match her words. So, for example, if you're talking with a woman and you say, hey, let's FaceTime at 4 o'clock or whatever, and she agrees to that, but then she doesn't follow through with it, red flag.
I think so too. Just like with canceling dates last minute.
Oh,
I mean, maybe one time.
Yeah. Well, the reason I think it's important, again, to kind of give a woman a female shit test is saying, does her actions match her words? And you'll be able to find that just by setting up phone dates before you even go out with her, that type of thing. And, for example, if you're texting, does she just kind of disappear? Versus having it be kind of a natural course of ending.
Yeah. And so I could see those things indicating other stuff too, potentially. Like she's just not that interested. Right. So not necessarily like a general red flag that she.
But see, here's the thing though. If a woman's not that interested, from a man's perspective, does he want to force that?
Definitely not.
Exactly.
Definitely not.
So it'd still be a red flag, even if it's for a different reason.
Yeah. That's true. It's a red flag for him.
Yes.
Yep. So he shouldn't really pursue that.
Exactly. Or he should just dial back his expectations a lot. But things like that to start with, if she can't even, if she flakes on text or FaceTiming or things like that, then what's the odds that she's going to flake on a date? And if she flakes on a date, to me, like, that's huge, especially if there was a lot of time prior.
Yes.
And if it ends up being an emergency.
Yes.
So there's two things that are happening. Either she's just flaking because she's not that interested and she's got so many other options or whatever's going on, or her life is so chaotic that there are a lot of drama going on. There is a lot of drama going on, and she legitimately can't be available.
Both bad things.
Exactly.
Should be avoided.
Exactly.
And I could see like occasionally something like an emergency coming up. But you know what I think will happen? Because this is what I would do, is if I was canceling like day of a date and something came up, I would immediately try to reschedule.
Yes.
And I would initiate it because I felt bad that I was the one that wasn't able to make it.
Exactly. And even then though, like, what's the odds that would actually happen?
Yeah, that's
in the first place.
I would like to know that in the comments, like,
yeah,
if any man has experienced a woman having an emergency. But I see what you're saying, like that it's very, very unlikely.
Exactly. And especially if it ends up being something where, like you just said, she doesn't even let you know until the 11th hour.
Yeah. More people tend to cancel on things because they just don't want to do it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Either something more exciting came up or they're just not excited about that date. They're not excited about meeting you.
Exactly. And so then it's something where if that's the case, I think honestly, just move on to the next.
Yeah.
Because you're forcing it then.
Yep.
And so, and if she is, but that's become an epidemic. Flakiness.
Yes.
It really
Ghosting.
has. Yeah. Ghost. Like,
yeah.
That would, I know I keep, aging myself when it comes to this, but the flakiness thing was never really a thing up until probably the last 10 years. Kind of when the dating apps kind of really kind of exploded. But now, if a woman flakes, it's actually something that is almost expected.
Well, think about it. There's no consequences now. Like if you two are complete strangers and you meet on a dating app, she can literally just unmatch with you. No consequences.
Yes.
Back before there were dating apps, like, it would be somebody would know that person that you just flaked on. And then word might get around that you did something crappy to him. So there was that, there'd be a consequence. So she'd be probably less likely to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. It makes perfect logical sense. So, the flakiness, and that's something you can tease out pretty easily.
Yeah.
Because if a woman truly has these issues, that she's going to be flaky. If she doesn't, then she's gonna stick to her word. And that's huge, because you think of the foundation of any relationship is trust. And how can you trust someone from day one when you say we're going to set up a meeting or we're just going to FaceTime?
Yeah.
And she can't even follow through with that.
Yeah.
And here's the caveat, though. If it happens once, twice, actually twice is even.
Twice is a little
too
much.
It depends on the time period. But if it happens any more than that, like, that's who she is.
Yeah, and what are you saying, about yourself if you're just sticking around for it? And you're always like, oh, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, see, the difficult part about that is that I think that there's a lot of genuinely nice guys who try to be understanding.
Yeah.
And also are looking through rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
As far as saying, okay, like, if I'm just understanding enough, she'll come around. But what happens is it reinforces bad behavior. Yeah.
It's almost like they have too much empathy. I've seen that even with this use of substances. I've seen, guys commenting on my TikTok saying this or that, he tried to be understanding that she has this problem, and then he sticks around. He's giving her funds. It's like, what do you think she's using that money for? It's enabling, I think.
Yes.
And the same goes for enabling that kind of behavior when she's flaking on you constantly and you don't give her any flack for it. There's zero consequence.
Well, another key indicator, if we're talking about going back really quick to the substance use, is if she had a history with that, but she's in recovery.
Yeah.
So if she says, I haven't used in 5 years and I still go to meetings every once in a while, to me, that's something where a lot of people in the manosphere would say, stay away from it no matter what. But I think that there can be women who are in recovery that could make really good partners.
Absolutely.
Because it goes hand in hand kind of with getting the treatment for any emotional issues you have. Because, first of all, realizing that you have them is the most important step, because then you can make modifications to the way you think about situations and therefore how you behave in those situations.
And look, honestly, I feel like everyone goes through some amount of trauma in their life. And so it's almost like if you're with somebody that has gone through something and has sought recovery and is there, that they know that they could do it again, right? If they went through some sort of other trauma, they kind of have a really good baseline versus somebody that's young, that's maybe never gone through really anything tough. Like at some point, they're going to go through something tough, and you don't know how they're going to handle that.
Yes.
Compared to somebody that has, and how they're going to handle it.
Exactly. So that's a really good point.
In some ways, it could be a positive.
Yes. So, I thought about all the different, kind of things that I would, see as red flags. And, I've certainly, spoken to a lot of women about over the years. And these things, I think, are, kind of non-negotiables. For example, one of them is if a woman is overly charming and makes a lot of big promises and you don't really know her that well yet, then that's something where that's usually an indication that she doesn't feel that great about herself and she's kind of overcompensating.
So almost like love bombing in a way? Yeah.
Yeah, but that could be done, again, before you even meet the person. By saying, you're so handsome, or, you're such a great guy. She doesn't know you.
I would love to have your babies.
Yeah. Well,
red flag.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, we don't even go there. Because how many other guys has she said that to? Right?
Good point.
But the first kind of one on our list is that women don't show empathy. And so... But that's, kind of an easy thing to tease out, too, if you think about it, as far as, just being open with her about maybe something that you struggled with and seeing her response to that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do think that.
Like, I had a really hard day today, like if you're just texting.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't ask a follow-up question, like, what happened? Or are you okay?
Yeah. And keep it on you, too, and doesn't just, like, change it quickly to herself.
My day sucked, too.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So just, simple things like that can, display that. And maybe she did have a really bad day. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if she doesn't try to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
First, before then kind of going into her situation.
Totally.
That's a red flag.
She should want to hold that space for you to open up about that.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Because especially if you're in the beginning stages, mm-hmm. what's going to happen when you get comfortable? Because this is when she's trying to impress you, mm-hmm. ideally, right? Mm-hmm. So, but this goes back to kind of the mating crisis we're dealing with, is that I think so many women have so many options that unless they really feel especially strongly about someone, mm-hmm. then they're not going to do that because they don't need to.
I can see that. Yeah. Like, because then they're not valuing you, right? Mm-hmm. They're not valuing even just the potential.
Well, it takes a lot of energy to be empathetic.
It does. So I think that's
where... So if you're talking to 7 guys.
Yeah.
And they all have bad days.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? Well,
first of all, you're like, no one's going to have the energy for that.
Exactly.
So yeah, if she has like that many guys that she's talking to.
You would never know that though.
I know. But I guess that would indicate.
Yes.
If she's not showing empathy.
That's an indicator that she may not be the only one you're talking to. And the reality is that I doubt I think for most guys, the average guys are maybe talking to one. Mm-hmm. And with an average woman, I bet she's talking to 10 simultaneously.
I would say like 5 to 10. Mm-hmm. Depends on how selective she is.
Yeah, 5 to 10. Maybe I'm going a little bit overboard.
I know.
But it's something where women are super great at texting. They can do it with a one-hand deal. And they can do it anywhere. So it wouldn't shock me if some women's numbers were 10. And then I think what they're trying to do, which makes sense in a way, but it sucks for guys, is they're trying to kind of get the best selection. Mm-hmm. But in their minds, the best selection are a lot of times who is going to be able to do the most for me.
Oh yeah, it reflects back on her. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I can see that. But if she obviously if she really likes a guy for more of the correct reasons and mm-hmm. she's of healthy mindset, again, she would be displaying more of that empathy. Mm-hmm. So I guess the lack of empathy can be a red flag for a lot of different things that could be going on. She's talking to too many guys. She's just not that into you.
Yeah, no, she just doesn't care.
She doesn't care. Right.
And so, that's huge. And mm-hmm. and when we're talking about just, like when I see a woman text the word "ah" to me, for example.
Oh, yeah. No, like the A-H-H-H-H? No,
just A-W-W.
Aw.
Yeah, aw. So, that's an indication of some empathy.
Yeah.
Do you know? So if I said my dog was sick today and she said, "Ah, is he okay?" Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like just something simple like that.
Yeah, or just like I'm sorry.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But I'm just saying when I see that that's like a good thing. Unless it's too much. Because then there's love bombing. But if it's just, like a natural, feminine, womanly response of, "Oh, that sucks." Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the first one. Mm-hmm. I think guys should pay attention to that.
Acts entitled instead of grateful. I feel like you can tell that early on. You could probably tell that from some women's social media.
Yes.
I think back to the girl on TikTok who got caught up with her TikToks being found out from the guy that she met on a dating app.
Yes.
And then he went and found her TikTok mm-hmm. and she had all this man hate stuff mm-hmm. and he immediately canceled the date. Mm-hmm. Guys, that is the only option. If you found content like that, the only option is to cancel that date.
Yeah, exactly. So what would you see from a woman as far as her behavior, and again, the talking stage most likely, mm-hmm. that would indicate that she feels entitled?
I just saw another TikTok I stitched about a single mom. She was talking into the camera about her expectations. And one of those expectations for a man to go out on a date with her would be for him to pay for a babysitter.
Oh, okay.
For her kids. Mm-hmm. I think that's just outrageous. Mm-hmm. I think that that's a huge red flag. Mm-hmm. I think that means that she doesn't have her stuff together. Mm-hmm. She should see that as her responsibility mm-hmm. and not some stranger's. that she doesn't even know yet. And plus, what does that even look like? Like, she goes out on the date with him and then he hands her some cash to give to the babysitter. Like, that feels so weird.
Yeah, it's transactional.
I do not understand that. But so there's things like that. Or she expects him to like send her food before they've even gone out on a date, you know, or pay for her Uber, or, you know, really pay for anything outside of just being on that date.
Yes.
I think is crazy expectations.
People tell themselves so much.
They do.
And this is, you know, something I know that the manosphere loves to talk about, but I think we have to talk about it a little bit, and that's the whole single moms thing. And before you get triggered, Emily.
Because I'm a single mom.
I know. Which is there's a lot of single mothers out there.
Yeah.
And things happen. At that, I don't think that's the fundamental issue, honestly. I think if a woman has more than one child with more than one man and she's single, that's got to be a red flag.
Yeah, because what are the chances that, like, I don't know, that she had healthy relationships that just kind of fell apart twice? No, they were probably really unhealthy relationships. And then how likely is her third or fourth or fifth relationship going to be healthy? And
it's hard enough for a guy to walk into a situation with one baby daddy. Can you imagine if it was complex. Two or more?
I really can't. I mean, just thinking about the schedules, it would be crazy.
Well, that's even if, in a lot of these cases, the guy's not even around.
Yeah. Now, that is the thing, right? So this is an argument that I've had in the past about like single mom and what that means. For me, I've always thought that it just means that you're single.
Yeah.
And like not married, single, yeah. Like what you would put on the tax form.
Yes.
And that you're a mother. But there is, I guess, a slight difference in confusion when people talk about it. They think of single mom as the dad's not in the picture. And I understand that happens. And I think that dynamic is very different from a woman that is just single and a mom and has the baby's daddy like in their lives and they're co-parenting.
Yes, that's very different.
So I feel like when the manosphere talks about single moms, it's that first definition of she doesn't have the guy in her life at all and everything is on her. And I think that a lot has to happen to create that. Like a guy, it's you know, mostly him and he's not a good person.
Yeah, but that even indicates that she is a bad picker.
She picked him. Exactly. Or it's that he is an okay guy, but she's a terrible person that doesn't want, you know, her daughter or son to be in his life.
Exactly. And so if you multiply that towards two or more kids with different fathers, then that, you know, what the odds are is that you may be number 4, or is this something that was a one-off?
Yeah.
You know, so for example, let's say you meet a woman and she's 30 and she had a child when she was 18. You know, it was a mistake, and you know, her morals, she didn't want to, and now she has a 12-year-old, but she hasn't had any more children since then, and she's only been in long-term relationships. So that would be an example, you know, again, to nuance this a little bit, of saying, you know, that you have the ability to learn from your mistakes.
Yes.
And poor judgments, and then correct.
Yeah, certain circumstances will always happen, and I think that they matter. So going back to, I think, why some guys in the manosphere will sometimes hate on single moms is that they assume, again, that it's that first definition where the dad is not in the kids' lives at all, and they don't want another guy to be forced into that position to take care of some other guy's kids. Like that's what I hear. What guy wants to take care of another guy's kids?
Yeah. Like, but the reality is that it can be challenging for sure. But I think it also can be something where it can be life enhancing, especially if the guy is a little older and doesn't want to deal with an infant in his life.
Yeah.
Because, you know, this other thing in the manosphere which I don't like is that it's like every guy feels like they need to have their genetic offspring. And I don't believe that's true 100%. I think there's some guys who don't want kids at all. And I think there's other guys that would be more than happy to be involved in a child's life in a healthy manner.
Yeah.
That
could be like a stepdad.
That could be like a stepdad. But you'll hear, especially in the red pill manosphere, that do not be a stepdad. Like, it's a terrible deal. Like, everybody's above you, even the dog, type of deal. And the reality is that if you're with a woman that truly values you, she will make you a priority.
I think so. I think that you can get that feeling from her pretty early on. So, of course, especially early dating stages, like, no one's going to value anyone too highly in their list of like other family members and of course their kids. But down the line, what does she believe in? Like, if she remarries, who comes first?
But you could ask
husband or kids.
You could ask, for example, in a text, what do you foresee your ideal relationship looking like day to day? Like, how many times would you see each other during the week? Like, would that be something that, like, how much of a priority would that person be, and how would you be able to juggle that with your other responsibilities? And if they said, well, it's really important to me, so I would make time for that.
Yeah.
Without neglecting my children or being, a good mom.
That's what, like, I don't agree with when people, and women are saying, I always put my children first. I'll always put them first over a man. Like, there's so much gray area. Like, of course, you're going to make sure that your kids are healthy and surviving. But then what about all the gray area? Like, are you going to let them stay up an hour late past bedtime because you want to see them more? You want to spend time with them more on a Friday night? Or are you going to put them to bed like you normally do so that you can spend time with your guy, with your man?
Exactly.
Which one?
Well, and that's the other indicator, too, as far as having the ex in their life co-parenting is the reason that can be positive is, in some ways, from a guy's perspective, especially if child support's being paid and you don't have to worry about a lot of those extra things, it's something where he has the ability to see the woman potentially on days that the children aren't there or weeks that they switch on and off. So if he has good connections with the kids, it's great when they're around. But if you were in a typical situation where you just have children, they're around all the time.
Yeah, I know.
But and I know it probably hurts you to even think about this, but it's nice. You probably feel like it's nice once in a while to get a break.
Yeah, absolutely. I think every mom would agree with that. It is. And you're right in that, like, I think that it's a huge green flag when there is a good co-parenting relationship.
Yes.
Right? And exactly. So I do think that that's more attractive to a guy that's potentially interested in that woman, in that mother. Actually, I have a personal story. When I was dating a couple years ago and I was on Facebook, my ex came over at one point and he mowed the yard for me and he posted it. Like, I think in his own way, he was just trying to like kind of show off and be like, this is what good co-parenting looks like. This is what I did for Emily. And so he tags me.
Talk about virtue signaling.
I know.
Sorry.
Oh, you're so right. But it actually worked to my advantage, having been tagged in that, because that is where I met my now boyfriend. And he saw that post as one of the first posts. Yeah. And he will still say to this day that was one of the first things that attracted him to me, is that he saw that I had a good relationship with my ex.
Yes. Well, that's okay. So let's move on to the next category, though, which I think is huge, is how do they talk about their ex?
Absolutely huge indicator.
If every guy they ever dated was a narcissist, guess who's going to be the next narcissist?
You're going to be labeled a narcissist for sure.
It goes back to, is she indeed picking poor men?
Yeah.
That that treat her poorly.
Yeah.
What does that say about her? But the reality is that it wasn't just. First of all,
it takes two.
There's only a small percentage of people that are actually diagnosed with NPD. It's like not even 2%. So people love, especially women, throwing around that word right now. So when I hear that, what I hear is selfish, which I think there are a lot of selfish people out there, for sure. But if it's something where, if you don't have any exes that you at least have, I would say, because I'm not a really big believer in being friends with an ex, but if you're friendly with your ex, one of the things I will say is that out of all the women I've dated, there's a handful of women that I still communicate with, but at this point, it's just kind of like if they posted something on Facebook that's really positive for them, I'll throw them a text saying, "Yeah, congratulations, that's awesome," and they'll say thank you.
It's just the occasional reach out.
Yeah, but
congratulations.
What it demonstrates, though, is that there's no hard feelings. It just wasn't a good fit for whatever reason. It could have been timing, it could have been personalities, whatever. But how you end relationships is just as important a lot of times as how you enter them.
Totally. I think so. And I think even if there's not necessarily that track record, like even if she's not saying that every ex of hers was a narcissist, I think that if her most recent one, if she's starting off pretty early on in the dating talking stage about her ex, and there's a lot of negativity about it, I think that's a huge indicator that it's unresolved. Yes. Right? Like things were not ended in the right way. And you don't know, like if it's unresolved, you don't know which way it's going to go. Yes. You don't even know if she's going to stay split or if there's going to be ongoing drama if she's still in contact with him.
Yes. So the perfect answer from a woman's perspective would be that it wasn't a good fit. And we came to that realization and we ended it. Here's another red flag, just even again, in the talking stage. Let's say she's over 21. Has she had any relationship at all? And if she said no, then if you could kind of joke, so are you a virgin? But it's something that...
Don't say that.
It's a joke. But it's something that you're going to... There's a group of women out there that have just never really been in a serious committed relationship.
Yeah.
But that's where you can say, what's your thoughts about hookup culture?
Oh, yeah, that's important, right? So if she hasn't had that serious relationship because she's been just participating in hookup culture.
Exactly. That was my whole point. I was around a way to get to that.
Yeah.
But so if she's been involved in hookup culture and she has a lot of sexual partners, that's going to be a red flag. Because the odds are that even if you do get in the door, get lucky, or however you want to phrase it as a man, it's something where, are you going to be around, or is it just going to be, and if you're looking for that, I guess that's okay. But we at this channel are endorsing relationships, not hookup culture. Yeah. So, I mean, guys, do what you want to do, but understand what you're getting yourself into.
I think most guys would agree that, if he's talking to a woman in her 20s and she's had no long-term relationship, she talks about participating in hookup culture. If he moves forward with talking with her, it's because he's okay with it not being a relationship.
Yeah.
And he's just, is thinking he's going to hook up with her.
Yeah. Except for the percentage of guys that think they can change her.
Yeah. They're at high risk then, right? They're the ones.
Yeah, they're going to get hurt.
Yeah, that's true. I can see that because he will just end up being used and she won't change. And he'll just get tossed to the side.
So this is kind of bold on my part as far as my thinking, but I'm interested in your perception of this. What do you think about, once you kind of talk about sexuality and things like that, about asking about their partner count?
I think that a lot of women will take offense to it if it's too early on. I think there's some women that would take offense to it no matter what timeline you're asking. But
here, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing one bit. But if it's something where it's low, I think they're more likely to tell.
I was just going to say that. So in the opposite way, right? I think that the ones that get offended over it, it's because they have a high body count.
Exactly.
And so exactly that because I can relate to having a very low body count. I have zero problem talking about it. I actually kind of see that as a positive thing that I will
lead
push.
With that.
I lead with it. I don't even wait for somebody to ask me. Honestly, like it's a plus. So
exactly.
I mean, you might as well, if you're a guy, to at some point pretty early bring it up and see her reaction. I mean, you don't need to force it out of her, but her reaction will be very telling.
And I know this has been a double standard forever, but I also think it's a red flag if the guy has a high body count.
I agree.
So it's something that society doesn't look at it that way. And, if you look at evolutionary psychology, men's dating or strategy for reproduction has always been to spread your seed as far and wide as possible. However, it's something where in this day and age, that's something where you're going to have issues with pair bonding and, potentially STDs. And so
I think so too. And you should be talking about all that stuff pretty early on. And that's another reason why I lead with it, because I'm talking about myself so that then I can find out about them.
Exactly. Good strategy.
And so, I mean, men could use that in the same way, right? Like they could talk about their history and then kind of encourage that from her.
Exactly. And I think that there's going to be some variation though. And I think it really depends upon age.
Oh,
so for example, in your 40s, if you've been with 10 guys or something like that, that's a lot different than if you're 18.
Well, I think another huge indicator is how is she acting with you? So if it's been one date, is she trying to hook up with you?
Yeah.
That's a red flag, right?
If she's done with you, she's done with other people.
Exactly.
You're not special.
So like if she's saying that she has a body count of 2 and it's the first date and she's trying to hook up with you, like that's just obvious. Her body count is not 2.
No, not at all.
It's the same thing with cheating, right? Like
I mean, the research has shown that if you've cheated, you're much more likely to cheat in the future. So I know the big thing women say is a lot of times is once a cheater, always a cheater. Type of deal. But I think it's more nuanced than that. I think that they're more likely to, but it doesn't mean necessarily that it's a fixed pattern in their life. But being able to talk about that, for example, and like from a woman's point of view, if she did that and she's able to get to the point where she's able to openly discuss what was going on for her at that time and has learned from that experience and said, that was the worst mistake of my life. I would never do that again.
And if she takes ownership, accountability for it instead of blaming the other person for the circumstances that, made it feel like she needed to cheat.
Yeah. There is, in my mind, absolutely no reason at all for cheating. And I know that sounds really black and white.
I stand by that too.
But if you're in a relationship that is that bad, get out.
Because that's the thing that you can do. Whatever reasons people list out for causing the cheating, the other option is to just break up.
Yes.
To leave. So that's why I totally agree with you. There's really absolutely no reason to ever cheat.
Exactly. And so that's something where that, goes into that whole kind of taking accountability piece. And so that leads me to another, potential red flag, not potential red, it's a huge red flag to me, is if a woman who clearly makes a mistake or poor judgment doesn't apologize.
Huge red flag. I'm trying to think of like what can possibly occur early on, and like the whole flaking on a first date. I could see that early on. I could see some sort of like miscommunication going on. And so are you both taking some sort of accountability for that? Because it takes 2 to kind of miscommunicate. I
think it comes back to the word we're all hating nowadays, but it's insecurity a lot of times. Because if you acknowledge the fact that you messed up, then that's showing a side of yourself that maybe you don't feel too great about.
Yeah.
And, versus kind of leaning in and saying, I'm a human being. I've got a lot of positive things about myself, and I have a lot of flaws. That's just how we are. And we're all going to make poor judgments and make mistakes. How do we handle that? And so I would say there's probably not a lot of self-awareness going on if the person doesn't apologize for things.
Hopefully this is really beneficial to guys listening. Guys, if you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thanks.
Thanks.